this is how I propagate tomatoes in water. Come join me in the chaos.
Join me in the chaos where the food forest thrives in the joy of growing. Our hearts come alive, embracing the mess where nature takes control. Come join me in the chaos.
All right, so these are my two starting plants. I was actually at Costco and they had those big things of cherry tomatoes with all the different colored cherry tomatoes. And so I took one of the pretty colored yellow ones and decided to take a couple seeds from one of them and put them into each of these cups. And so this was a month ago. And I mean, that one's just incredibly rooted. I can't even get it out. But what I tried to do 3 days ago, believe it or not, and you can see the scar right here, I cut off one of these types of, what are they called, the suckers? One of these suckers that was kind of popping out here, and I plopped it in this cup. And no joke, look at this. Already has roots. And this is an aeroponic system. So if you're not familiar with these things, no, I'm not sponsored. I think this company actually went out of business. But I used to mostly use these for growing seeds. And I realized a lot of plants, they can't take high amounts of dissolved solutes in the water. And so you end up with problems and sad plants. And so you have to specifically pick plants that can handle high concentrations of dissolved solids in the water, which basically means they can handle a little bit of osmotic pressure. This one I just did today, so obviously it hasn't rooted yet, but all you got to do is take one of these little sponges, and I like to slice them down the middle. So I saved my old ones right here and just like let them dry out a little bit, and then I'll rehydrate them. But you just take a piece of these things. Like when you get these online, they're much longer, and that's just too long. Like you only need it to hold on to it. What you're relying on is the aquaponic system, which is basically this cutting is dangling, and when it turns on, it just pours water. And that falling water makes it so that these cuttings aren't just sitting in water all day. Every 5 minutes, it just turns that water on for like a minute or something and just runs water over the surface of it. The sponge keeps it from drying out in that time period, but generally it's just floating in air, so it has access to oxygen, so you don't have biofilms forming on the surface of that cutting. Because I found generally that's what keeps my cuttings from rooting, is when they form that bacterial biofilm, that slime that forms on cuttings. It seems to interfere with rooting, and I think it's because it creates like a oxygen deprived or hypoxic environment, and most plants don't like that. Things like water spinach does, but generally you don't want that for growing things like tomatoes and most things that you would use for food. So if you have those sponges, if I don't slice them in half like this, they just make the cuttings or the seeds rot. But by slicing them open, it allows water and air to get in there and keeps them from drying out, or sorry, keeps them from going hypoxic, going, what is that called? Anaerobic? Yeah, anaerobic is probably a better word. You can kind of see the water pooling a little bit on the top of that sponge, but it only stays on for a small period of time, and then the water turns off, and then oxygen can come back to it until it turns on again. So super easy way to use these systems if you have them laying around. I actually saw these at the thrift shop the other day. You can find these at like secondhand stores, or you can just buy new ones online. But I think they're like 50 or 60 bucks. But it's really easy to propagate cuttings with them. Hope that helps you get a bunch of tomato plants. Thanks for joining me in the chaos.